Did you know that Hawkeye had a brother in the comic books? And did you know that his brother turned out to be one of his greatest enemies? Today, we're going to take a look at Clint Barton's sibling, Barney Barton, and find out exactly what made that baddie such a devastating villain. In order to tell this tale, I guess we have to go back to the very beginning. What do you remember about Clint Barton's early childhood? In the MCU, we never really see much, if anything, of Hawkeye's past. The most we know about his personal life is that his family is extremely important to him, and spending time with his wife and children is what keeps him motivated to stay on the Avengers. In the comics, Clint and his brother Barney had a tough childhood. Their father was a drunk and would regularly come home, pop open a few bottles of beer, and take out his frustrations on the boys. Clint was the younger one, but a bit more bold, so he'd actually fight back against his father, which would only make his beatings worse. After their father would have enough and pass out in his bedroom, Barney would often take care of Clint and teach him how to handle himself better in fights. The pair's parents eventually died in a drunk driving accident, leaving them orphans. But after a few years at a center, and a few more years after running away to join the circus, both boys became skilled archers. While Hawkeye went on to become a small-time criminal before eventually reforming and joining the Avengers, Barney's journey was a bit different. Barney was actually kind of a stand-up guy. He left the circus to join the army, and after serving, he worked for the FBI. He went on a few undercover missions, but eventually was mortally wounded by Egghead's paralysis ray, and at this point, the story gets pretty awesome. Basically, after some bumpy retconning, it turns out that not only did Barney survive his apparent death, but he was healed back to full health. Baron Zemo was the one to find him, and this prompted him to come up with one of the most convoluted plans in comic book history. Since he was angry at Clint Barton, he thought that if he mind-wiped his brother Barney, transformed him into a better archer, and set him loose on Hawkeye, he might have actually had a shot of killing Hawkeye. And that's exactly what Zemo did. He got in touch with Barton's old mentor, the villain known as Trickshot. This is the guy who basically perfected Barton's accuracy and made him so deadly with a bow and arrow. Trickshot trained Barney too, in order to become just as deadly as Clint. And eventually, Barney took up that supervillain's mantle as his own, becoming the brand new Trickshot. Not so long after, Zemo finally unleashed him on Clint. This story goes pretty much how you'd expect it. Barney surprise attacked Clint and won their first fight, but Clint dug down deep, and in their second confrontation, found the will to overcome his brother's might. You know, fairly common superhero trope stuff. But even though Clint beat Barney in the end, the older Barton boy didn't magically return back to his noble FBI agent roots. He continued on as a villain, joining up with Osborn's Dark Avengers. He fought alongside that team of villain and anti-heroes, before eventually finding himself homeless, allowing random people on the street to beat him up for $5 a pop. Clint Barton managed to track Barney down at that point and rehabilitate him, bringing the villain back to a version of his former self.